Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Bienvenidos a todos a esta sesión de...
Welcome everyone to this session of MOVE and interoperability in electric mobility. And today we're going to be talking about interoperability in electric mobility between countries and regions in Latin America and the Caribbean, and to talk about different issues funding of the European Union. And as for the presidency of COP25 for Latin America and the Caribbean. And today's session, we hope that it goes over the different countries of the region in the area of interoperability. Before starting our session with our international expert, we have a few welcome words from the government of Chile. Carolina Simonetti, who is head of the Ministry of Transportation of the Chilean government, is going to give our intros. Thank you for the to the European Union and the government of Chile for this session. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who is with us today. First of all, I would like to invite you all and welcome you all on behalf of Chile as the presidency of COP25. The need to reduce the effect that human activity has had on the planet leads us to take action to reduce greenhouse gases effects. And in this sense, transportation is one of the most relevant sectors because in Chile, 36% of the total consumption of energy in the country corresponds to transportation, which operates with 99% of hydrocarbon based fuels and is responsible for most of the greenhouse gases in our country. The benefits of electromobility are several. First of all, is that they're more convenient than the conventional ones, and the inexistence of gases gives direct benefits to the population and the environment. On the other hand, we have to consider that the recent participation in renewable fuels in Chile, in the production of renewable energy in Chile, reduces the effects of greenhouse gases in Chile. Also, electromobility helps would help our country to reduce its dependency on hydrocarbon based fuels. So we have supported electromobility in urban areas. We increased from 3 buses in 2017 to almost 800 in 2020. And recently, last week, we just adjudicated a tender for the public transportation in Santiago, allowing 1,000 more electric buses to be um, added to this fleet. We have launched tenders for electric services in the cities of Antofagasta and Valparaiso, and also we are preparing some others for many other cities like Puerto Montt, Carrascagua, and other mid-sized cities. This effort looks to achieve or meet the goals, sustainable goals, and also with the Ministry of Energy and the Energy Sustainability Office, we've been working to open the way for electromobility and to improve urban logistics. In spite of all these advances, there are still several challenges to achieve a massive incorporation of electromobility in the country. We need to speed these technologies. We need to level the fields so that electrical vehicles are not at a disadvantage with similar vehicles of internal combustion. We need to diversify the market with more models of vehicles, and we need to have a charger network throughout the country so that it is easier to um, take on longer distances. And we need to incorporate our experience and standards with our neighbors and put it online, like the EcoCarga app from the Ministry of Energy, that tells you the location and characteristics of the public access chargers in our country. Develop new business models and innovate in financial mechanisms for um, SMEs, and define regulatory frameworks for electric mobility so that we can get the most potential of electric mobility. We need to accommodate the different charge system of different operators and get them to be interoperable so that we maximize the charge network, the access, and the adoption by the users. The users should be able to charge their vehicles throughout the whole of the network of public access, well, any operator anywhere. And therefore, they need to have access to chargers that are compatible with their vehicles so that they can move from one place to another. And also, we need to have a variety of chargers so that a visitor can have access to that charge. So we need to have systems that use open, unique protocols that are compatible and use standardized information defining access and payment forms that are common at the um, charging network. That's what we call interoperability in electric mobility. We in Chile have put all the chargers in a common database, sharing information such as the characteristics, technical aspects, types of connectors, location, and power. This location is in the web of the Ministry of Energy and the Fuel Superintendent's Office, as well as in the EcoCarga mobile app. We, we still need to include relevant information such as the price of the services and the availability of the charges in real time. That's why Law 305 of for the electrical network talks about the interoperability and everything that has to do with it. The interoperability of the charging structure will not solve all of our um, environmental problems, but it is a step forward. Finally, I would like to thank everyone who has made it possible for us to be here this morning. This initiative is taking place as part of the support of the European Union through their Euroclima Plus program, and that will be presented at the COP25 to promote climate action in Chile as well as in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Carolina. And we would like to thank the European Union for the organization of this project and also the leadership of Chile. This project has been funded by the European Union, and it has been carried out with Chile as the president of COP25. Now we're going to have the participation and some welcoming words by Horst Pilger, who is the head of the International Association sections of the European Union.
Thank you for coming in representation of the European Union. The floor is all yours.
Gracias. I will speak in English. I hope that's okay with you. So, my name is Horst Pilger, and I'm the head of sector here in the European Commission in charge of the Euroclima program that we have mentioned before. It's a real honor for me to be here today at this regional initiative to promote the interoperability of charging and payment services for electric mobility in the frame of the support provided by the European Commission to Chile in its role as presidency of COP25. I believe we all know the importance of climate change. No use talking to the converted about this a long time. We have all read the sixth assessment report of the IPCC, and we all believe we need to do more. We need to do more overall, but the transport sector, I believe, is a particular worry. Why? In Europe, the sector presents almost a quarter of Europe's greenhouse gas emissions, and it's the main cause of air pollution in cities. And also in Latin America and the Caribbean, the transport sector is responsible for some 35% of the total greenhouse gas emissions from burning fossil fuels. And not only that, I think it's on a negative trend. It's an increasing share in the overall greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a particularly important sector to tackle. And in that sense, I believe electric mobility can really make a big contribution to help reducing the amount of energy used in the transportation sector, but also to create significant employment opportunities. So it really has this dimension of potential of contributing to economic growth throughout the region. However, in this sector, it's very important to harmonize technical standards and make sure that systems are interoperable. And what more so than in the electric vehicle sector. Therefore, I believe what we're talking about here today is really not a small, but a rather central element in this overall picture. The development of standardized e-mobility technology and interoperability is particularly urgent for the sector. And the decisions that the investors are taking today can lock in technology for many, many years. And therefore, it's highly time that we agree and discuss standards in order to hopefully put our climate change objectives into the right direction. And what we're trying to do in Euroclima is we're trying to improve the cooperation in the region. I think this is a beautiful example of how important it is that there is a cooperation throughout the region. Because when it comes to the economies of scale in the development of technologies, there's a huge potential in working together and ensuring we're working according to the same standards and rules. In the European Commission, we have a joint research center, and that coordinates for us the whole business of regularization and standardizations of these technologies in order to provide a harmonized framework for the development of these kind of technologies. And I'm very happy that the EU, as a partner of the LAC region, has the chance here to present its readiness to support the LAC region with the knowledge created in Europe in the development of standards and technologies, as well as in the regulatory frameworks for its decision-making processes. And we hope that this can all lead ultimately to some sort of regional agreement that can set the basis for the development of frameworks to enable universal connectivity and interoperability between electrical vehicles and the electric charging infrastructure across the region. The Euroclima program will continue to support the development of this type of initiatives as it has done in the past, for example, with the community of practice in this area, and the Move to Zero initiative, or indeed some other projects with which we try to push electric mobility in several countries in the region. We are glad to continue our work hand in hand with our international partners in Latin America and the Caribbean to respond to the region's needs in policy development, access to finance, and to foster regional and bi-regional dialogue to understand and to accelerate a transformation of our economies towards a more sustainable future. Thank you very much for inviting me here, and I really look forward to some interesting discussions. Back to you.
Thank you, Horst. Thank you for those kind words. Y ahora, nosotros también
And now we have the participation of our um, we have Guillermo Cotujan, who has a few words for us from Hola. So thank you, Guillermo. The floor is all yours. Well, first of all, thank you, UNEP, and for participating in this important webinar, which is, I understand, is the first one of two that we're going to be having. And also, I would like to thank Penuma to conform a group, and the as the colleague delegate from the EU was talking about working on in regional agreements for interoperability, and as an energy consortium with 27 member countries in Latin America, uh, can contribute to this. In Latin America, 22% of the polluting greenhouse gas contribution is from the transportation sector. So we can estimate that those emissions can increase up to 50% in 2050. Therefore, and as the colleague from Chile was saying, working on transportation as one of the main sectors of pollution in the cities, and this impacts public health very much. And it's very important to lead the efforts to try to move the transportation sector to a sustainable uh, management. One of the main barriers that we detect for the massive deployment of electric mobility is the lack of infrastructure and the lack of recharging services. As also, the technology does not seem to be accessible for the great majority due to the cost of the vehicles themselves. In any way, we have to work to try to increase the number of charging centers. In some countries, we have noted an increase in the number of these centers, and we have also seen the expansion of um, charging corridors that allow for um, that allows the traveler to go longer distances. Strategic investors are interested in this now. For example, um, the car manufacturers themselves who want to introduce this type of vehicle. So we are at an optimum moment, we believe, to increase the infrastructure, the management, and the charging infrastructure. We should not lose sight of that our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, approximately 60% of electricity generated in the region is generated through clean sources like hydroelectrical generation or non conventional renewable, such as solar and um, eolic, s- compared to other parts in the world where, compared to them, are we still have a ways to go. So they can work together without restrictions. So to bet on inter for electric mobility and interoperability of it in this region with charging recharging services, bringing all the users a better experience, accelerating the use of this technology, and finally through that adoption we can contribute to the reduction or improve our goals in the reduction of greenhouse gases nationally as well as regionally. So that is all. Thank you for your time, and I give it back to the organizers.
The regional office in Latin America and the Caribbean. Esteban, please. Thank you very much, colleagues, and thank you for this model of Chile and their leadership as the COP25. We received this request of technical cooperation. Also, I want to thank the European Union because through their program, Ecoclima Plus, they financed this technical assistance. And then today's journey is a first journey of the ones that we're going to have ahead. And that's precisely where we're working with other partners that further on in the next weeks, we're going to hear some case studies from Chile. And the topic of interoperability by itself, it is a concept, a technical concept that for some people it's hard to understand. And some countries maybe don't see that need of in terms of electrical mobility. Nevertheless, the work that we're doing with this technical assistance is to help to establish these foundation that can be expanded in the future. So today, with the international experts that we have, is that he's going to show us other experiences, best practices that can be taken into account, and we can adapt these to our regions, and not only so that we can have more electric vehicles out there, but how we can help to develop an ecosystem in terms of electrical mobility. And in this subject of interoperability, we have seeked for different comparisons. For example, in telecommunication interoperability, it's a very known subject. And in these different layers that Roland is going to talk about, it is possible to enable new businesses that sometimes they're not evident at first sight, but also other services that as electric mobility is progressing is not only to transport people. And just notice that which other services the vehicle can provide. Or, for example, the vehicle in different applications that it may have. So that's why we believe that interoperability in this subject, it could be a very technical subject, that this could be used in the region, and it is important that governments invest in this. So, on behalf of Pinuma and the different partners that we have today, we're going to continue to work in this subject, and we invite you to join us and hopefully build this together. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Esteban. And as our colleagues have mentioned, this has many layers and it has many elements and many different components. And this is why we have today Roland Verwerda, who is the director executive of the Platform of Knowledge of the Netherlands. He is an international expert who is going to speak about what is the interoperability, what are the advantages, how it helps to foster electric mobility in the region.
What interoperability is in electric mobility, how does it help to promote electric mobility, and your experience in other regions of the world. Thank you, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Juan. I hope everyone can hear me correctly.
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm trying to do a huge technical exercise by having access via two computers and then sharing the presentation from the other computer. So let's see if that works. So far so good, right? So just give me a signal if anything
Yes.
goes wrong. But I'm very happy to be speaking for this group. Let me first briefly introduce myself. Roland Verwerda. I'm since the end of 2015 involved in charging infrastructure. My current roles include that I'm a director of the knowledge platform for charging infrastructure in the Netherlands. Steering committee member of the National Charging Agenda, a joint effort with public and private organizations in the Netherlands to kind of organize and direct the rollout of public charging and everything around it. Since last year, I have, together with a number of businesses, founded the EV Roaming Foundation. which is the management organization of the OCPI roaming protocol, but also has a broader purpose around roaming for electric vehicle charging. And I'm self-employed through my business Curato. And I've already done some work on interoperability. So you see some names there. I'm very happy that today I'm working in the region of Latin America together with PNUA on the technical assistance to further promote the development and scale up of interoperable charging. I'm also very grateful for the work that we do together with the government of Chile, the close collaboration we have on their current efforts, the great work that they've already done. And I'm also very happy to be involved with the Ministerio de Minas y Energía in Colombia, together with the Inter-American Development Bank, to work on interoperability, specifically the regulatory recommendations for a country such as Colombia. So it's my honor to briefly introduce you in the topic of interoperability, its relevance, its importance, some cases, some lessons learned. I'm not an IT guy, so I hope everybody can follow it, but it may contain, the storyline may contain some acronyms, abbreviations. Well, I hope you can follow me, otherwise I'm always available for further information. So, what is interoperability then? It's sometimes good to start with the standard definitions that are available. I'm looking at the ISO definition, IEEE definition, and we see that it's about the ability to exchange information, to focus on systems. Still, it is a very technical approach. And for me, it's I've come to the conclusion that interoperability is not per se a technical challenge. So when I look at the definition of system, for example, as we see being used, which is not by definition IT system, it is a transport system, a respiratory system. You have all kinds of systems which are not per se technical. So it's very important that interoperability is not only about technical elements, but it's about systems, ecosystems that exchange information in order to communicate. And the interesting definition on ISO is that also the user should have little to no knowledge of the unique characteristics. So there's already a user-centric approach. These are kind of the generic advantages, but they may be interesting to look into when we get to EV charging. So what we see in general, when you have an interoperable system, a system that seamlessly works together, exchanges information without users being aware of it, is that there is little cost or less cost for installation integration, because there are less interfaces that need to be conversed or translated. The reuse of components takes place relatively easy, so scale up is easier. There is limited dependencies on third parties. So if you have an interoperable system with, for example, a uniform protocol or a single connector or something similar, we get back to that. Then it is easier on that fundament to develop new services. There is no technology lock-in. So the competition, the market competition, moves away from technology from access to real competition on price and products that also provides a more equal playing field. So good examples, as Esteban mentioned, are telecom or banks maybe. If I want to have a new telephone or a new subscription, it is relatively easy to compare subscriptions because there is an interoperable system alive. For banks, it is interoperable in the sense that I can pay at many places with the same card. It is maybe not so interoperable if I want to open up a new bank account and reuse my bank number, but that's a different element. Please note that interoperability is not about openness per se. You can still have an interoperable system where you pay for protocols, for technicalities. It's not per se openness. So when we move to EV charging and interoperability, then the first thing people think about, I guess, is connectors and is roaming, which is okay, which is great as a start. And we see, for example, that on the connector side, there are a number of variations already when you want to charge your vehicle. We have the North American standard, we have the Japanese standard, European Union standard, China standards, and we have Tesla then as the always the separate category. And a form of interoperability is, let's say, in the European Union that we have chosen for AC charging, so alternate current, let's say slow charging, to use the Type 2 Mennekes connector, and for DC charging, we use the CCS Combo 2 connector. That is a form of interoperability in the sense that you provide a minimum standard that allows, let's say, that allows for interoperability, that allows for users to charge with a single connector. The same aspect of interoperability you can see around roaming. I will get back to that. But for example, payment systems, it is good, you know, if you would prescribe a certain payment system, that is a form of interoperability. So credit cards, they need interoperability, because if you cannot pay everywhere, you know, what use is a credit card? And we see the same with the different players in the sector of EV charging, how they are connected. I will get back to that. I'm not aware of any questions, but if there are, then probably someone can shout some questions. Otherwise, I'll just continue. So this is the simple part of interoperability. But what we have found is that there is far more to it. And it is good also to take a look at that and to take this interoperability definition a bit broader. So we discussed the hardware elements. Sorry. The screen is not following me, it seems. Yes, sorry about that. So we discussed the issue of hardware, but we also see that if you look at charging stations, they need to be connected. In order to exchange information, they need to be connected in some way, via cable, via a mobile connection. They also exchange information between car and station. So we have a connection layer. We also see let's say, a communications layer where they exchange meaningful information. If you want to have your information on Electromap or on Google, you need meaningful information. You need a data model for that. So there is some kind of protocol or communication layer there. If you want to provide your drivers with a standard experience, this is how you charge, this is how you pay, this is how you do the metering, this is how you, let's say, navigate to a charging station, then there is apparently a level of interoperability around services, so that everybody knows, if we're talking about, let's say, the price of something, that we have a same definition of price. Or if we're talking about quality, we have the same definition. Or how you maybe also how you use a charging station. So there's also some kind of harmonization and therefore interoperability around services. And last but certainly not least is the regulatory and business framework. If you want to have an interoperable ecosystem, you need to be able to sign contracts between each other, to have agreements on liability, to have agreements on payment, to have standard business processes so you know how to work together. And you need a framework of regulation in order to describe this and also manage this. So there's a, let's say, a business framework layer. And this is what we call layers of interoperability. I'm happy to say, or maybe unfortunately, I did not invent this all myself. We looked at the smart grid architecture model, which is already around for a few years. It's part of a standard, Senelec standard, that's a European ISO standard, you might say. And it already defined these 5 layers in the context of smart grids. So, of course, very, very happy and very useful to be able to reuse these. And I think they are very well applicable. So let's move on to the market for electric vehicles, charging. And I want to give you some cases of markets that we see for EV charging, for charging infrastructure, and what we see happening around interoperability. It is a bit high over, it's not too technical, but I think it gives some interesting ideas, and I will close off this presentation with some recommendations. So first of all, I use this picture often. It is a simplified description of a market for EV charging. And what you see is that you have a car charging at a station, a driver managing it, and a operator, charge point operator. I think it's prestador de servicio de carga, who operates a charging station. But in order for the driver to have access, they need a RFID card, or they need a payment, some form of payment. So there's a, sorry about that. There's a mobility service provider who provides basically the RFID card or the access. And often in young economies, in young ecosystems, the CPO and the MSP are the same company. So that is interesting to say. But you can see, and I will show a bit more about that later, that there are connections to the broader, to the energy system, and also ways of doing that in an interoperable fashion. So let me show you three cases to to give you some ideas. So one case that we've seen, for example, in countries such as Portugal, Luxembourg, and Europe, is that the government had already an energy system which was pretty closed, which was, let's say, government run. There's a national utility, supply grid operator, kind of a leading player. And for charging, they pretty much dictate how it should run, how it should be run. So in Portugal, for example, there was Mobier, there was a company who was allowing third parties to access the market, but putting a very strict regulatory framework around it, how they should be accessed, how they should provide everything. So that is a model that happens in more places. I've also seen examples. I think of this in Latin America. I'm not using them. I'm not using Latin American examples. You can fill that in for yourselves. But you see, what we saw is that hardware was pretty much regulated in this case by the European Union. Protocols were pretty much regulated in the sense that it was all centralized. The information process, the access, OCPP was being used between charging station and vehicle. Roaming was possible in the sense that you had to provide access to everything. Service were very much regulated, but it was a closed system in a sense. So a real business framework was very limited. There was a kind of a one-size-fits-all contract. So you could ask yourselves, so there were a few advantages, of course. But the government was the major investor in the sector. So there was little room for commercial business cases, but also therefore little room for innovations. And for the flexibility to develop new services, to implement new ideas, to look at smart charging, to look at other solutions. Maybe taking this picture, you might say that this is pretty much the ecosystem that we're looking at. There was a kind of a national CPO, maybe some other slightly commercial CPOs, but it was all managed through a single situation. A second case of interoperability that may be of interest is what we see predominantly in Germany and also been in France, is that these energy markets are open. In general, the energy market in Germany and France is open, but it's pretty much government is heavily involved. There are Stadtwerke, so municipal energy companies in Germany. I think, let's say about 700 of them. There are regional operators in France, and they play a role in the implementation, in the rollout of charging infrastructure. There are also commercial players playing a role on the regional level and on the national level. So you see a mix of government-funded organizations and purely commercial players. And what we see there is the optimization that we see happening is firstly happening on a regional level. And I guess I know there are also examples, of course, in Latin America, where you have a utility per city or per region, And maybe or not also allow new players to enter, but it's a mixed situation. In addition, what you see is that specifically in Germany, but also in France, is that there are also, that's why I put some cars, the little cars outside those blue circles. There are also car manufacturers that have no direct involvement in the energy system, but they want to be a part of it. The electrification of vehicles means that the car manufacturer has no access to the customer, to the driver. So they want to involve the driver and be part of their, be part of the driver's environment. So the car manufacturers want to be part of the system. And what we see is that those car manufacturers are not looking for an interoperable open system. The primary focus, what we see in Germany, also in United States, less so maybe in France, is that they are focusing on logins for their own customers. So this is a situation where you say, okay, so the hardware can be regulated to a certain degree, apart from Tesla, of course, although that may change in the future. But protocols is difficult. You see maybe some harmonization for OCPP, because the charging stations, they communicate with the CPO, with the back office through OCPP. That is pretty much standardized. But for the exchange of information between companies that you need for roaming, or for payment services, kind of standardization, harmonization of payment services, that is very difficult to regulate. So there is no guarantee that you can charge at every charging station. Maybe not even in a region, but certainly not across regions, across a country.